My people, it's your boy Mr. Getting It Done. Welcome back to the channel. We got another one for you. So this specific video, I'm going to talk about the difference between your payment due date and your statement date on your credit card. I know my last couple of videos, regarding this subject, people have had a lot to say. Not to say that anybody's wrong, because I don't get down like that. However, I want to paint the picture because I'm a visual person. I learn visually, and I know others do too. But I wanted to paint the picture on why these two dates are important, and then secondly, why you should be paying your credit cards in full every single month. All right, so let's jump right in. So I got a lot on my board here. I'm gonna break it down, help you guys make sense of it, right? Let's pull this puppy out. All right, maybe right here. All right, so we're gonna talk about a couple of examples here, right? So we're just gonna use a credit limit of $1,000. Okay, if you have a credit limit of $1,000, let's say that your balance on that credit card is $800. Okay, so that's 80% utilization, right? If you have $1,000 balance, if you have $1,000 credit limit, you have $800 balance on that card, you're at 80% utilization. Okay, so when we talk about your minimum date and your statement date, so for those of you that have credit cards, if you want to pause this video right now and pull up your credit card statement, pull it up, right, and look for your minimum due date, which is when they require that minimum due, whether it be 30, 50, 100, $150, whatever the case is, and then your statement date. Okay, pull out your statement right now, print it, pull it up on your phone, and find these two dates. Okay, and when you find the date, write it down, put it on the paper, put it on put it on the bill itself, put a note in your phone, write them down, become familiar with them, because according to these dates is how you're going to make your credit card payments, so that way you can strategically maximize your credit score every single month. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about is your minimum due date, because that one comes first. So your minimum due date, let's say in this example, is 7/10. July 10th is when the minimum due date is on that credit card. $800 balance, remember. So the minimum due is $30, right? On that $800, on the 10th, $30 is due. Okay, so let's just say you make the $30 payment, right? Normal people just make that $30 payment. I bet I got an 800 balance. They only want $30. That's a no-brainer. Here you go. So you make the payment, right? So now that leaves you with a $770. So you have $770 left on this balance. Now you're at a 77% utilization on that card. If you let that 77% utilization report out to the credit bureau, your credit score is gonna go down. Okay, so I put an example here. So if you had a 700 at the time that this happens, you have $800 balance. You make a $30 payment, you're left with a balance of $770. If you let that report out as your balance, $770 at 77%, and you're at a 700, and these are just hypothetical. I'm trying to paint the picture for a context here. So from a 700, you'll drop to a 600, right? That's the scale of running up your credit card that high. Right, that's the scale. That I'm not saying that your score is going to drop 100 points. I'm using this as an example to paint the picture for you, so you can understand how. Excuse me, my stunner shades. As you could to paint a picture for you on how much you'll take a hit on your score if you carry over a gigantic balance like that. Okay, so if you make the minimum payment, you carry over 77, your credit score is going bye-bye. It's going to drop down. Okay, now if you have the 800 and you pay it in full, right? If you take this 800 and you pay it to zero, you pay this to zero, your credit score is going to go up, right? So if you had a 700, you're going to go up to a 750. Oh, can you see that? Oh, okay, I hope everybody can see that. So if you had a let's try that. So if you had a 700, then you're gonna go up to a 750 if you pay that 800 in full. Again, these are just hypothetical numbers, right? I'm just painting a picture for context purposes, right? So now, you know, I always say stay between 1 and 10%. You know, 5, 6, 7% is like ideal. That's considered elite. Like, you know, and that's coming from Experian. Like, Experian send you emails and say, hey, this is considered elite usage. That's where I got the terminology from, right? So let's just say 5%, right? So 5% of $1,000, right, of your limit, 5% is $50. Okay, so when you have a 5% reporting out, right, if you have a $50 balance reporting out, you're going to take a minimal hit on your credit score. So let's go over here to the statement date. Okay, and I hope all this makes sense. I tried to paint this picture so that it could make sense in those minds that are having issues trying to comprehend this information, right? So let's say on your statement date, so your statement date is typically 3 to 5 days after your minimum payment date, right? So when you find your minimum payment date on your statement, right, you're like, look at your statement date and then see how many days is after. Sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3, sometimes it's 5. So just know the difference in days, right? But generally speaking, it's about 3 to 5 days after your minimum payment due is when your statement date happens. So let's say your statement date in this example is 7/15, right? So your due date 7/10, your payment is 7/15. So that's 5 days after. So you know that from the 10th to the 15th, you should not be using your credit card if you have paid it down to 0. Okay? Because if you use your credit card between the 10th and the 15th, right? Let's say you paid that 800 down to 0. Let's say you wiped it out and you start using it again on the 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, and the 15th. On the 16th, on 7/16, the balance gets reported out. So whatever's left of that $1,000, if there's an 800, if there's 770, if there's 500, if there's 300, on the 16th, that information is reported out to the credit bureaus. So now the credit bureaus are going to get this information, and then that balance is going to show up on your credit report. Okay? So it's important that between this window, the 710 to 715 window, when you pay your credit card down to 800, pay that 800 balance down to 0, that you not utilize that credit card between that period to allow time for that amount to report out. So you want that 0 to report out to the credit bureau, so that way it hits your credit profile, they update the balance with 0, and your score goes up, right? So in this example, 0 balance, right, equals a credit score increase whenever you pay it down to 0. So some people may say, hey, well, you're saying 5 to 7% or 5 to 10%, you know, what if I carry over a 5 or a 10% balance? All right, I get it. The reason why I say that you have to be strategic in how you utilize your credit cards and what's your plan is because if you're looking to maximize your credit score, you will pay it down to 0. Okay, that means you're looking for the highest credit score possible. Now, if you have if you leave the amount between 5 and 7%, we're talking about $50 to $70, right? If you have a balance and you let that report out, right? If you let 5 or 7%, right, which is about $50 to $70, if you let that report out on the 16th, right, your score will just dip just a little bit, just a slight dip. So if you had a 700, you know, you might drop down to a 670. Right, you know, just a little dip, because, you know, you've only utilized 5 to 7%. Now, if you carry over, like in this example over here, 77%, 770, if you just make the minimum payment and you let this 77, you know, report out, your score is going to hit dramatically, going to decrease dramatically. So at 10% or higher, your score is going to take a hit. Okay, and at 10% and up, your score will decrease based on the percentage of your utilization. So that can vary depending on what your credit limit is and how much you're carrying over. But again, just for context, okay? So if you carry a 10% or higher, let's say you're at a 700, now you know you may drop to a 630. And that those will fluctuate based on how much you're carrying over, right? So the whole point, my people, my beautiful people, right? The whole point of this video is to understand your statement date and your payment, your statement date and your payment due date, because if you're looking to maximize your credit score, you do not want to carry over a balance. If you do carry over a 5, a 7, or 10% balance, you will take a slight dip in your score. It won't be a huge dip, a slight dip, but at the end of the day, you're now going to pay interest on that debt that you're carrying over. So even if it's $50 or $70, that may not be much. That may be much to certain people. You're going to pay interest on that $50 or that $70. And when you play the credit game is to use the credit and pay zero interest on the bank, zero interest to the credit card company, to the banks, right? That's the name of the game. And if you're playing it outside of that, then you're hustling backwards. We don't want to pay interest to the banks at all. So that's why I say that when you go to pay your credit card, make sure you pay it down in full every time, so you don't pay interest, and then you can continue to use it after your statement date, right? Because once that zero reports out, you're not going to be, it's a zero balance, so there's no interest to pay. Okay, and then you just keep using it again and again and again. I don't recommend anybody carrying over a balance, because you pay interest, and that's not how you play the credit game. So my beautiful people, I hope that was as concise, as sweet. I try to make it as short as possible with enough context to paint the picture for you on why it is important to know your statement date and your payment due date on your credit cards, and pay your cards accordingly to those dates, and when to use and not use those cards according to those two dates. So my beautiful people, I hope everybody's well. I hope everybody's healthy. It's 2023. Let's make better financial decisions. Let's educate ourselves. Let's learn this credit game. Let's leverage this credit game to create wealth for you and your family, like I did for me and my family, man. And I'll catch you guys in my next video. If this video was helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel, share it, smash the like button for the YouTube algorithm. If there's any questions that you may have that I can help you with, answer, give you advice, etc., please comment in the comment section below, and I'll make a video just like this one to answer that. And until next time, my beautiful people, stay beautiful. Abundance is your birthright, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.